The storm hit Seoul like a furious beast, rain hammering against the glass skyscraper where Hyun-Jae Min's empire thrived. Inside, the office was silent, save for the distant rumble of thunder. Serena Kim tapped her fingers nervously against the mahogany desk, her sharp heels echoing softly across the polished floor. "Mr. Min?" she called, tilting her head, her dark hair falling over one shoulder. "You asked to see the new shipment report?" Hyun-Jae leaned against the wall, arms crossed, sharp suit clinging perfectly to his broad frame. His icy gaze traveled over her, lingering in ways that made her pulse quicken. He was impossibly handsome, with features carved from stone, yet there was a vulnerability in his eyes tonight, a raw, unspoken need that made Serena instinctively wary. The lights flickered. A low groan of the building's aging power grid echoed through the room. Then with a sudden click, the door locked behind them. "Damn it," Hyun-Jae muttered, trying the handle. The storm must have tripped the security. Serena's heart raced as she stepped back, careful to maintain professional distance, though the cramped space made it impossible to avoid proximity entirely. "We'll just wait it out. It shouldn't be long." Hyun-Jae's lips curved in a half-smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Wait it out," he repeated, his voice low, a dangerous undertone lacing every word. Minutes passed. Silence stretched, heavy and electric. Serena felt his gaze burn into her like fire, a magnetic pull that was impossible to resist. She tried to focus on the report in her hands, but her fingers trembled slightly. "You're different than I expected," Hyun-Jae murmured, stepping closer. The scent of his cologne, strong, masculine, commanding, filled the air. Serena swallowed hard, heart hammering. She began, then stopped. Words failed her under his intense stare. The storm outside raged on, but inside the room time seemed to slow. Hyun-Jae's hand brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, and for a fraction of a second, their breaths mingled. A forbidden tension sparked, a dangerous obsession that neither could ignore. And in that locked office, between whispered apologies and silent glances, a night that began with irritation and inconvenience began to transform into something far more dangerous, and far more irresistible. The storm outside showed no mercy, lightning slicing across the night sky and thunder shaking the building. Serena shifted on her heels, feeling the weight of Hyun-Jae's gaze like a tangible force. His presence was suffocating yet magnetic, every movement deliberate, every word calculated, yet tinged with something raw and unpredictable. "You're not like the others," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "Confident, clever, dangerous, in your own way." Serena raised an eyebrow, keeping her tone light despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "I'm just doing my job." Hyun-Jae stepped closer, closing the space between them, his tailored suit brushing the curve of her arm. Serena's breath caught. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the sharp cologne that seemed to wrap around her like a trap. "Your job," he murmured, leaning just enough for her to feel the intensity of his stare, "is distracting me." Her lips parted slightly and she quickly clamped her mouth shut. She had to remind herself, he was dangerous. A mafia boss. Obsessed, maybe, but powerful and untouchable. And yet, in this locked room, she sensed a vulnerability beneath the steel. Something Hyun-Jae would never let the world see. A flash of lightning illuminated the office, casting long shadows across the polished floor. For a moment, she caught him watching her, his sharp eyes dark, almost hungry. Serena's pulse quickened. Her instinct to tease, to provoke, bubbled up, despite the danger. "You think I'm dangerous?" she asked softly, tilting her head, letting her gaze linger on his lips. "Maybe you should be careful. People like you, they attract trouble." Hyun-Jae's hand hovered near hers for a heartbeat, then dropped just shy of touching her. His jaw tightened and his usual composure flickered. "Maybe I like a little trouble," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The room seemed to shrink around them, the storm outside mirroring the storm building between them. Serena's heart pounded, not just from fear of being trapped, but from the forbidden electricity that sparked every time Hyun-Jae's gaze lingered, every time his nearness brushed her awareness. Minutes passed like hours. Neither spoke, but the tension was tangible, desire, obsession, and danger twisting together in a dangerous, intoxicating cocktail. And Serena knew with chilling clarity that one wrong move could ignite something neither of them could control, something far riskier than the storm raging outside. The storm's fury hadn't eased, and the office felt smaller with every crack of thunder. Serena leaned against the desk, trying to steady her racing heart, but Hyun-Jae's presence made it impossible. He stood close, just close enough that she could feel the heat from his body, smell the faint trace of expensive cologne that made her senses spin. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" he asked, voice low, dangerous. His sharp eyes never left hers. Serena faltered, her pulse betraying her. "I'm just trying to stay professional." Hyun-Jae smirked, a slow, predatory curl of his lips. "Professionalism doesn't suit you. Not here. Not now." Her breath hitched. She should step back, create distance. But curiosity and something darker kept her rooted in place. There was something magnetic about him, a pull she couldn't deny. And despite herself, she wanted to see where this obsession would lead. Lightning flashed, illuminating his strong jaw and piercing gaze. In that instant she saw it, the vulnerability, the raw need that even a Mafia king couldn't hide. It was dangerous, intoxicating, and it made her pulse race. Without thinking, Serena moved closer, brushing her fingers against the edge of the desk, deliberately letting her hand graze his as he reached for a file. Hyun-Jae froze for the briefest moment, his sharp intake of breath audible before regaining composure. "Careful," he warned, voice almost a growl. "You're playing with fire." Serena tilted her head, lips curving in a teasing smile. "Maybe I like fire," she whispered. His eyes darkened, and for a moment, all pretense vanished. He stepped even closer, his body brushing hers, every movement deliberate and electric. The tension between them was undeniable, a taut wire ready to snap. A loud crack of thunder shook the building. Serena jumped slightly, and he caught her elbow in a quick, instinctive move. Their proximity now impossible to ignore. Serena's skin tingled where his fingers touched, and Hyun-Jae's gaze dropped momentarily to her lips, then back to her eyes, burning, obsessive, unrelenting. Neither spoke for a long moment. Outside, the storm raged, but inside the office, an even more dangerous storm had begun. Desire, obsession, and temptation twisted together, daring either of them to cross the line. And Serena knew with a thrilling shiver that tonight, boundaries were already beginning to blur, and neither of them would remain untouched by what was coming. The storm had not relented. Rain hammered the windows like relentless fists, and thunder rolled across the city with a threatening growl. Serena's heels clicked nervously against the floor as she moved to glance at the office security monitors. Something was off. "Mr. Min," she began cautiously, her voice low. "I think someone is outside. Watching." Hyun-Jae's eyes narrowed, sharp and calculating. His posture stiffened, the charming facade replaced by the predator he truly was. "Show me," he ordered, his voice smooth but edged with steel. On the grainy screen, a shadow flitted across the perimeter. It was subtle but there, someone was lurking. Serena's heart raced, but she held her ground. She could see the faintest smirk on his lips, though his eyes betrayed fury and a hint of fear. "Jae-hoon," Hyun-Jae muttered under his breath, the name of his rival, a man ruthless enough to exploit his weaknesses. Impotence wasn't just personal, it was dangerous, and Jae-hoon knew it. Serena stepped closer, instinctively brushing against his arm. The contact was electric. Hyun-Jae stiffened, but instead of pulling away, he held her gaze. "Stay close," he commanded, almost possessively. They moved together toward the monitors, tension wrapping around them like a living thing. Every brush of skin, every accidental touch intensified the dangerous energy that had been simmering between them since the storm began. "Do you ever get scared?" Serena asked quietly, daring to probe the man behind the facade. Hyun-Jae's gaze softened, ever so slightly, though the intensity never left his eyes. "Fear is a luxury," he said, voice low. "But sometimes, I let it reach me. And sometimes, I let people in who shouldn't be here." His gaze flicked to her, dark and intent. "Like you." A sudden crash of thunder made them both flinch. Hyun-Jae moved instinctively in front of her, his arm brushing hers in a protective gesture that sent a shiver down her spine. He didn't speak, but his presence was a promise and a warning all at once. Serena's pulse thudded, not just from fear but from the magnetic pull between them. She realized that his obsession wasn't just dangerous, it was intoxicating. And in the midst of the storm, with danger circling them, she also realized she was beginning to crave it. Outside, the shadow lingered, patient and calculating. Inside, desire and obsession clashed with peril, setting the stage for a night neither of them would forget, and a danger neither could escape. The storm outside had eased to a steady drizzle, but the tension inside the office was electric. Hyun-Jae stood near the window, arms crossed, eyes scanning the darkened streets for any sign of Jae-hoon's shadowy schemes. Serena lingered by the desk, her fingers nervously tracing the edges of a folder, trying to calm the turmoil inside her. You've been unusually calm tonight, Hyun-Jae remarked, his voice low, smooth yet threaded with curiosity. Even with him out there trying to destabilize everything I've built. Serena swallowed. She had rehearsed what she wanted to say for weeks. Now, with the danger pressing close, she decided it was time. There's something you don't know about me, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Something that makes me who I am. Hyun-Jae turned, his sharp gaze softening yet still intense. You can tell me. I won't judge, he said, but there was an underlying warning. His obsession with control flaring at the idea of vulnerability. She inhaled, steadying herself. I grew up on the streets. My family, we didn't have much. I learned to survive by being clever, by understanding people's weaknesses. I've had to fight for every opportunity I've gotten. Her dark eyes met his. I'm not as fragile as I look. Hyun-Jae stepped closer, the subtle movement causing her pulse to spike. The air between them was charged, part desire, part danger. You're far from fragile, he admitted, almost reluctantly, his voice low and husky. In fact, that's what makes you dangerous, irresistible. Serena's breath caught. She felt the brush of his fingers as he adjusted a stray strand of hair from her face. It was intimate, electric, and dangerous, an act that set her skin on fire without a single word spoken. You're obsessive, she whispered, heart hammering. He smirked darkly. Maybe. Or maybe I just recognize someone who won't be controlled, and I want to know everything about her. His gaze traveled over her with an intensity that made her shiver. The sound of rain tapping against the window was suddenly drowned out by a sharp beep from the security system. Jae-hoon had made a move, closing in, testing Hyun-Jae's defenses. Hyun-Jae's jaw tightened, but his hand lingered near Serena, protective and possessive. For a moment, the danger outside and the tension between them merged. Desire, obsession, and peril entwined, making it clear. Neither of them would remain untouched by the events unfolding tonight. And with Serena's secrets revealed, Hyun-Jae's obsession only deepened, fueled by the vulnerability she dared to show. The night air was thick with tension. Rain-slicked streets reflected the neon glow of Seoul as Hyun-Jae's penthouse security systems blared. Serena had barely finished relaying what she'd noticed on the monitors when the first alarm sounded. Someone was trying to breach the building. Hyun-Jae's eyes darkened. Stay behind me, he ordered, voice low, commanding, yet laced with something intimate, an unspoken acknowledgement that he couldn't let anyone harm her. Serena's pulse raced, not only from the imminent danger but from being this close to him. His broad frame shielded her instinctively, his hand brushing against hers as he gestured toward the nearest exit. She felt the electricity in that accidental touch and struggled to focus on the threat rather than the sensation. A shadow lunged through the security door, swift, silent. Hyun-Jae reacted instantly, a trained predator, subduing the intruder with precise, lethal efficiency. Serena's breath caught in her throat, torn between awe and fear. You're reckless, she whispered, heart hammering. He leaned close, his lips near her ear. And you are dangerously curious, he murmured. The warmth of his breath sent shivers down her spine. Her body responded despite her rational mind, the tension between them now a living, pulsing thing. They moved through the corridors, alert to every sound. Another intruder attempted to cut them off, but Serena's quick thinking and sharp reflexes helped them evade a deadly ambush. For the first time, Hyun-Jae allowed her to share in the danger, to rely on her instincts as much as his own. In a quiet moment behind a locked office door, they pressed close to avoid being seen. Serena's heart thundered as Hyun-Jae's hand brushed hers again, deliberately this time. His gaze locked onto hers, intense, obsessive, almost possessive. Do you always make me feel like I'm losing control? He asked, voice low, almost pained. Maybe I like it when you're vulnerable, she replied, her voice daring, teasing. Hyun-Jae's jaw tightened, a flicker of frustration crossing his features. Desire mingled with obsession, his normally unshakable control slipping for the first time in years. For both of them, the night's danger was entwined with temptation, each near-death encounter amplifying their forbidden attraction. As they stepped out into the hallway, adrenaline still pulsing, Serena realized that this was no longer just about surviving the storm outside or the threats around them. It was about the dangerous, consuming energy between them, and neither of them would walk away untouched. The office was eerily quiet after the storm, but the air remained thick with tension. Hyun-Jae had retreated to his private study, a rare vulnerability flickering across his face as he handed Serena a confidential folder. This contains everything you need to know about the rival factions, he said, voice steady but with an undertone of uncharacteristic trust. I'm trusting you to keep this safe, and to use it wisely. Serena's fingers brushed against his as she took the folder. The brief contact sent a jolt of electricity up her arm, a subtle reminder of the obsession simmering between them. You're putting a lot of faith in me, she whispered. Faith or obsession, Hyun-Jae corrected softly, stepping closer. His gaze lingered on her lips, dark and intent. I can't stop thinking about you. Serena swallowed, heart pounding. She wanted to retreat, to remind herself that he was dangerous, that the Mafia world they navigated was lethal, but the pull was irresistible. And I can't stop thinking about you either, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Before the moment could deepen, the office doors burst open. An ally, someone Hyun-Jae had trusted for years, appeared, eyes flashing with duplicity. The betrayal was immediate and sharp. Hyun-Jae's plans were nearly compromised. Traitor, he hissed, a growl of fury and disbelief vibrating through his chest. Serena instinctively stepped closer to him, her presence a grounding force in the chaos. The traitor lunged for the folder, but Serena acted fast, grabbing his arm and twisting it with precision. Hyun-Jae took advantage of the distraction, striking the man down with calculated force. Breathless, Serena met his gaze. The intensity there was almost unbearable. You're insane, she whispered, half in awe, half in warning. And you are brilliant, he countered, voice low, almost reverent. Never forget, your mind is as dangerous as your body. For a moment, the world outside and the storm of Mafia threats faded. All that remained was the heat of their proximity, the electricity between them, and the dangerous knowledge that trust, like desire, could be fatal. Hyun-Jae's hand brushed hers once more, lingering longer than necessary, possessive and deliberate. Desire and obsession intertwined with danger, leaving neither of them untouched. Outside, Jae-hoon's plan was still in motion. Inside, the tension between Hyun-Jae and Serena had deepened into something combustible, something that neither could ignore and something that could change everything. The night had grown colder, shadows stretching across the luxurious penthouse where Hyun-Jae and Serena had holed up. Jae-hoon had made his move, cornering Hyun-Jae's empire from all sides, and the tension was palpable. Hyun-Jae's sharp eyes scanned the room, calculating, plotting. Serena stood close, her presence a grounding force amidst the chaos. Her fingers brushed his sleeve as he moved past her, and the contact sent a thrill through both of them, electric, dangerous, forbidden. They're coming, Hyun-Jae muttered, voice low, controlled but edged with barely suppressed fury. We can't wait any longer. Serena nodded, her mind racing. She had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. She wasn't just assisting, she was part of the plan, part of the danger, and part of his obsession. The doors burst open and Jae-hoon's men stormed in. Hyun-Jae moved with lethal precision, his instincts razor-sharp, while Serena used every ounce of her wit to anticipate attacks and keep them both safe. At one point, a thug lunged at Hyun-Jae from behind. Serena's quick reflexes saved him, her hand gripping his shoulder as he spun, delivering a brutal strike to incapacitate the attacker. Hyun-Jae's gaze found hers, dark and smoldering, a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and obsession. Careful, he growled, his lips dangerously close to her ear. You're making me lose control. Serena's pulse raced, her breath shallow. Maybe I like it when you do, she whispered, teasing and daring him. Hyun-Jae's hand brushed against her waist, possessive and firm. The fight around them blurred into background noise. Every movement, every glance, was a dangerous dance of desire and obsession. Finally, after a tense battle, Jae-hoon was cornered. Hyun-Jae stepped forward, gaze icy, voice calm but lethal. This ends tonight, he said, the weight of his authority unmistakable. Jae-hoon sneered but knew defeat was inevitable. With a final, calculated strike, Hyun-Jae ensured his rival would no longer threaten them, at least not tonight. As the adrenaline faded, Hyun-Jae turned to Serena, his dark eyes softening yet still burning with obsession. You were brilliant, he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And dangerous. Serena smiled, her body still humming from adrenaline and desire. Maybe we make a good team, she said, her voice a mixture of challenge and promise. For Hyun-Jae, it wasn't just the victory over his rival, it was the recognition that Serena had claimed a part of him he had never surrendered before. His obsession, his desire, and maybe even his heart. The city below was quiet now, the storm replaced by a heavy, humid silence. Inside the penthouse, Hyun-Jae stood near the window, jaw tight, hands clenched. He had won the battle against Jae-hoon, but the real fight, the one inside him, was far from over. Serena approached, her steps soft but purposeful. She could feel the tension radiating off him, the obsession and frustration tangled together like a storm threatening to break free. "You're quiet," she said gently, placing a hand lightly on his arm. The touch was deliberate, grounding, and electric. Hyun-Jae turned, eyes dark and smoldering, and for the first time he spoke without pretense. "I'm not whole," he admitted, his voice low, raw. "There's a weakness I can't hide. A part of me that's broken." Serena's heart ached for him. She had seen his power, his obsession, his dominance, but she had also glimpsed his vulnerability. "Hyun, it doesn't make you less," she whispered, stepping closer, letting their bodies nearly touch. "It makes you human. And it doesn't change how I feel about you." His gaze flicked to her lips, then back to her eyes, dark with desire and longing. "I want you more than I should," he admitted. "But I don't know if I can satisfy you." Serena's hand rose to cup his cheek, thumb brushing lightly over the taut skin. "You already do," she said softly. "You don't need to control everything. You just need to trust me, trust us." A moment of silence stretched between them, electric and fragile. Then Hyun-Jae's hands found her waist, pulling her closer in a possessive yet careful embrace. Desire, obsession, and vulnerability collided, mingling in the charged space between them. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the danger that had been narrowly avoided, and the storm that had passed inside the penthouse. Hyun-Jae finally allowed himself to surrender to the feelings he had tried to suppress for so long. Serena's presence, her bravery, and her intimacy had unlocked something he had never dared to admit. "You're mine," he whispered, voice husky with longing and obsession. "And you're mine," she replied, her lips brushing his, a promise sealed not just by desire but by trust. The reckoning was complete. The Mafia battles had been fought, the danger momentarily subdued, and Hyun-Jae had confronted his own weaknesses. But the night still held one final chapter, a resolution where their obsession, desire, and survival would collide. The first light of dawn crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, painting the room in soft gold. The storm had passed, leaving the city glistening with rain, but inside, the tension between Hyun-Jae and Serena lingered, transformed into something deeper, something raw, intimate, and unshakable. Hyun-Jae stood near the balcony, looking out at the city he had fought to protect, the battles both outside and inside himself finally giving way. Serena approached, her hand finding his without hesitation. The warmth of her touch grounded him, the obsession that had consumed him now tempered by trust and desire. "You did it," she whispered, voice soft, but carrying the weight of admiration and relief. "You survived, and we survived." Hyun-Jae turned, his sharp features softened in the morning light, eyes dark with lingering desire and quiet vulnerability. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted, taking her hand and holding it possessively. "You weren't just my secretary tonight, you were my partner, my equal, my obsession." Serena smiled, stepping closer, her body brushing against his. "And you finally let someone see you as you are. Not just the Mafia boss, not just the obsessor, just you." The air between them was electric, the pull undeniable. Hyun-Jae's hand rose to cup her cheek, thumb brushing gently over her skin. "I don't want this to end," he whispered, his voice husky with desire. "You're not letting it end," Serena replied, closing the final space between them. Their lips met in a slow, deliberate kiss, charged with everything that had passed, danger, obsession, desire, and trust. Every lingering brush, every shiver, every whispered promise cemented what they both knew. This was more than lust. This was survival, partnership, and surrender. Outside, the world moved on, unaware of the chaos they had faced, the threats they had overcome, and the obsessive, consuming connection they had forged. Inside, Hyun-Jae finally allowed himself to embrace desire without shame, obsession without fear, and love without restraint. Pulling back slightly, he rested his forehead against hers, voice low and intimate. "We'll face whatever comes next, together." Serena's hand traced the line of his jaw, smile teasing yet tender. "Together?" she echoed. In that moment, the Mafia world, the danger, and the storms, both literal and metaphorical, faded into the background. What remained was theirs, desire, obsession, trust, and the promise that neither would ever let go. And as the city below awakened, Hyun-Jae and Serena stood united, their hearts racing not from fear, but from the fiery, unbreakable bond they had forged in the most dangerous night of their lives.